we're going to talk about sex and God, how religion distorts sexuality. And this is a book written by Daryl Ray, author of The God Virus, who was a minister for 14 years before he became an organizational psychologist. The purpose of religion has been to propagate religion. That's their goal. Religion's goal is to propagate religion, and sex is one powerful method for achieving this. And that is the thesis of this book. A lot of the choices that we make are kind of, we think they're choices, but we're just copying the guilt-ridden teachings of our culture, which is very much influenced by religion, by Christianity. But it doesn't matter what religion you are, they all have restraints on your sexuality. In some religions, it's even worse, where for premarital sex, a woman can get stoned. Sexual beliefs are manufactured by religion and have no basis in reality. Let me repeat this. Sexual beliefs are manufactured by religion and have no basis in reality. And these are the beliefs, like, some of them are like, God is always watching you, so if you have impure thoughts, God knows. If you masturbate, God sees. If you have sex before you're married, God will punish you. Masturbation will injure your marriage. There are Catholics still now preaching that. You cannot masturbate because it's selfish. Mormons too. You should only have sex with your partner. So you need to be a patient man and wait till she's in the mood. And you also learn that the instant of conception is when some God plants a soul into the embryo, and therefore it is a sin to stop the development in any way. If you live in a Muslim country, you can't choose your mates or control your body. You may be forced to marry a man with other wives, or to be married when you're just a child, actually. You can be killed for having premarital sex. As a Muslim boy, you will be taught how to treat and control women and that they're subservient to you. You will read in the Quran that your wife is always supposed to be ready to have sex, even if she's in the midst of cooking a meal. Now, in order for religion to have this power over your sexuality, they have to have three key beliefs. One is a belief in an afterlife. Two is this all-knowing, voyeuristic God that determines your status in the afterlife. And three, and this is where they control you, that this God dictates a specific kind of sexual behavior to the exclusion of all others as a condition for entry into the afterlife or heaven. So you must hold all three of these beliefs for religious distortions to truly impact your behavior. There's an afterlife, there's a God that determines your status in the afterlife, and there are rules about how to get into the afterlife. And of course, the people who wrote the Bible, somehow they knew all this, but I'm telling you, they made all this shit up. Oops, I'm going to try not to use that word. Now, he says that he has seen firsthand the destructive impact of these three beliefs because he once worked as a clinical psychologist in an institution for adolescent boys and then in private practice for children and families and marriage counseling. Then he transitioned into organizational psychology, working with executives, managers, and employees. So he worked with people who are having sexual difficulties, and he would ask people, and a lot of you can probably relate, and I can relate to this, what prevents you from communicating your concerns, desires, or problems to your parents, wife, boyfriend, husband, spouse? The first response was often one of terror. I could never tell my husband what I like. He would divorce me. Or He would disrespect me. Or I could never tell my parents my boyfriend and I are thinking about having sex. They would kill me. I could never tell my parents that I'm gay. They would disown me. These people were so afraid they could not even imagine communicating openly with the most important people in their lives. It took little probing to find religion at the root of this terror. Religion forces people into denying, avoiding, judging, and hating themselves and others for their sexual desires and behavior. Religion seeks to control the uncontrollable. Now, what does religion gain by putting unnatural restrictions and perpetuating myths about sexuality? They want to scare you. Fear. Fear is the foreplay of religion. Fear. Because you must be afraid of your sexual instincts and drives and desires, because that will make you keep coming back to them to get the rosemary and to get the baptism and to get the read the books and to do the holy prayers and whatever the things that you do. You need fear, because without fear, and you also need shame and guilt, because without fear, shame, and guilt, you wouldn't need the religion. I'm going to say that I actually have a fond place in my heart. I have family members who are into religion, and I honor people who are devout, who want to be devout to God, and I honor people on a spiritual path. I really do. I just think that the religious texts have a lot that takes us away from our spiritual path, from our own goodness, because it teaches us that we're evil. Like, God gave us this powerful sex drive, but we're not supposed to use it. Like, it's this whole thing of, you're born evil and you're born a sinner. And that's why I called my coaching business The Treasure Within, because I think that we're born good, that the treasure is within us. And my motto on it is, who were you before the world told you who to be? Because religion is telling you that you're bad. And I think that's very harmful. I don't think it's true. There's no evidence for that. There's no evidence for any of the stuff that they're saying. Now let's go over a list of some myths about sex. And I'll just read a couple. God is watching you have sex. Maybe even Jesus is watching you. And Jesus does not want you to masturbate. Homosexuality is a greater sin than adultery. Women should cover themselves for modesty in the sight of the Lord. Sex outside of marriage is always wrong. Religious leaders are equipped to counsel you on sex and marriage. Menstruation is dirty, so you should not have sex with a menstruating woman. Teaching children and adolescents about sex will encourage them to actually do it. Fantasizing is wrong, so if you lust in your heart, you have committed adultery. No one feels the sexual feelings you feel, so you must be sinful. Too much sex in marriage is wrong. Women don't enjoy sex. Premarital purity and abstinence will help you have a long and happy marriage. Women who have had a lot of sex partners are sluts. Women should be subservient to men. Oral sex is unnatural. God inserts the soul at the moment of conception. Ministers who go astray deserve forgiveness, just as Jesus commands. Now, let's talk about Jesus. In the Christian writings and traditions, they make him a virtual eunuch. So did he have no sex drive? Well, he was called a rabbi. In the Bible, he was called a rabbi. Throughout Jewish culture, a rabbi has been a married man. So how could Jesus be a rabbi and not married? If he was married, he would automatically be sexual, especially if he had children. But being married or having children would interfere with the Christian narrative of Jesus as an asexual creature. And not only is Jesus asexual, Mary, his mother's asexual because, don't you know, sex is dirty. It makes women dirty, and a woman bearing Jesus had to be pure. They're also saying the possibility is that he was female but thought to be male. That's called androgen insensitivity syndrome. If he was born of a virgin, that means he was conceived through parthenogenesis. That means a female who can reproduce without being fertilized by male sperm. But the offspring of any parthenogenic human would be female, since that's all a parthenogenic creature can ever produce. So if the virgin birth were true, Jesus would have to have been a female. Now, they come up with this idea that God put a seed in her through some kind of... How could a seed get in there? It makes no sense. It's interesting to look at the whole virgin birth idea from a biological perspective, because a theme throughout Christianity is that sex is an unclean act. That is the whole basis on which that they can control your sexuality. They tell you that sex is an unclean act. So that's why women shouldn't be having sex, because it destroys their purity. See, once sex is unclean, that's a premise, and a lot of people still believe that. I guess it would be unclean because of the sperm. What makes it unclean? Is it a woman's vaginal juices? Is it the man's uncircumcised penis, which was full of smegma? Was it the STDs that the men carried around? Or maybe the women too? Was it the ejaculatory fluid? That they were all freaked out about the fluids and the sweat, and that made it dirty? What made it dirty? Because a man could fuck his wife, and that wasn't dirty. Or was it? Maybe she was menstruating. What exactly makes it dirty? Anyway, sex is an unclean act throughout Christianity. How can the Savior be born of an unclean act? Such a thing could not be allowed in the sex-negative worldview of early Christianity. For this reason, there was some editing going on by the early writers to eliminate inconvenient facts. Wives, children, sexual conception all would say that Jesus was a sexual creature born of two sexual creatures, but this challenges the asexual perspective of the early church. Asexual perspective. But what happened to all these asexual priests, especially the Catholic priests? They're not allowed to have sex. They're the ones that go around as the pedophiles. And the same church that tells you to not have sex has covered up the pedophilia that they have done for years and years, and in some countries where the laws have not come after them are still covering it up. We are sure of this. What happens when you tell people they shouldn't have sex? A good priest doesn't have sex. What about all the nuns that got pregnant? You're telling people that sex is bad, but there's no human that has been able to successfully not have it and thrive, because the people that don't have it, they act out and they're weird, they're creepy, there's something off about them. I was at a Catholic church recently and I got weird vibes from the priests. They're not allowed to have sex. When you're not allowed to have sex, you become weird out and creepy. But that's not the only religion. Other religions, the men are allowed to have sex, but the women are not. I don't know who they're having it with, but I digress. What happened to the women and children in the Bible? It's difficult to believe that most of Jesus' followers were not married. Peter certainly was, but the wives were left out of the New Testament, and so were any children. It has been suggested that Jesus and disciples were all gay, hence no need for wives or children. But this seems a bit far-fetched. So we have the asexual myth to Christianity. The appearance of asexuality was so important that even the mother of Jesus had to be a virgin, as we already mentioned. Mary was not married to Joseph, she was married to God, and God impregnated her. So I guess it's okay to get impregnated as long as it's by God. Obviously, that's made up. Who believes that? Okay. So the way that religion controls people is through guilt and shame. Guilt that you've done something wrong, shame that you're a bad person for having committed the act, once again, of masturbating or having sexual thoughts, that you're impure. So a child learns that you must pray for forgiveness when you do something bad. If you do not pray or confess, God will punish you. So this sets up the guilt cycle. And when you transgress or sin, you must return to your personal religion for forgiveness. No matter what it is, drinking alcohol or smoking a cigarette or whatever habit it has that you're not supposed to have, you have to go back to your church to ask for forgiveness. That's how they get you. It's as if the religion infects you with the disease and then gives you the fake cure. They make up all these things that are supposedly bad, and then they tell you that you must go back to them for forgiveness so that you can get into heaven for this God that will judge you. And this is all stuff that they made up. There's no evidence for any of it. In fact, it doesn't even make any sense at all. Now, it does make sense that there's an intelligent force in the universe, creativity and intelligence, and it could also be love. But love is not hating on us the way that these people are hating on our sexuality. Now let's talk a little bit about sex and guilt, because so many sex acts and ideas are liable to lead to eternal damnation. People have a strong incentive to avoid expressing or discussing secretly held ideas and their interests. And this fear leads them to have hidden thoughts and activities and prevents normal, appropriately channeled sexual expression. So people who keep suppressing their sexuality because they think it's bad, they become frustrated, and they will eventually express sexual energy, but in ways that may be destructive of the self or others, because whatever you repress comes out sideways. You know, we've all heard the stories of the priest who was found giving a blowjob to the male prostitute in the car or in the bathroom stall, and the priest pedophiles. I'm sure in every religion, you know, there's a website for, I forgot, I didn't write it down. There's a website where you can go to see all of the stopbaptistpredators.org. And Freedom from Religion Foundation's Black Collar Crime Blotter. So Islam, Buddhism, Mormonism, Protestantism also have these sexual abuse scandals in their congregations. So what these people do, people who sexually repress themselves, they condemn those who express themselves freely. Like people coming after me for being too sexual. You know, like, why do you care? Okay. And they attempt to impose religious restrictions on them. They may become inappropriately aggressive toward others or have secret affairs that undermine their family and relationships. Worst of all, they may physically, verbally, or sexually abuse those who are most vulnerable. Now, women are particularly punished for their sexuality because it's up to us to tame your lust. Gender differences are evident in infants with respect to emotional expression. So infant girls are more responsive, more attentive to the emotional states of their mothers and other children. It's a genetic quality that women have, okay? This means that we as women imbibe emotional messages and cultural ideas more rapidly and easily than men. Religion takes advantage of this tendency by creating guilt messages that are uniquely targeted at women. But I also think because the Bible, all these texts were written during the age of the patriarchy and women were subservient, they especially wanted to shame women. And one more way to keep women down is to repress our sexuality. That is a way of controlling women. All major religions put most of the responsibility for sexual morality on women. Religions teach that women should remain chaste and should control and hide their sexuality so men will not be tempted. Once a woman is infected with this idea, she's more susceptible to guilt when these are violated or she imagines they have been violated. If she tempts a man, it's her fault. Some religions even blame the woman if she is raped. But in the end, women can pray, they can attend services, go to Mass, do Bible study, go to women's religious meetings, but the fact remains, they're guilty of being a woman. Now, kind of going into what I said earlier about God created us as sexual beings and then condemns us for acting on that drive. Indoctrination tells us that the church's teaching cannot be wrong, so it must be our sinful nature and Satan tempting us. Kind of like Eve tempted Adam and created the whole downfall of mankind through her wily, sexual, nasty ways. These evil women. And remember, this is all made up fantasy. The Bible is mostly a collection of folklore, mythology, some historical events that have been severely edited. Okay, severely edited in order to have this mission of control. Now, religion is a master of thought diversion, okay? So whatever thought you have, you can make it guilty or pleasurable. So here's some example. A religious person could say, God hates porn. I succumbed to temptation. I feel guilty for looking at a porn site last night. A non-religious person would say, it was fun looking at that porn site last night. Glad I found it. Gave me some ideas for my wife and me to explore, and I enjoyed masturbating to one of the scenes. Here's another example. The religious person feeling all guilty. I love my husband, but the new minister really turns me on. I'm a loathsome person for even thinking about such things. Whereas the non-religious person says, that new man at work really turns me on. I think I'll tell my husband about him. He seems to enjoy knowing I get turned on by other men. Now, which of these individuals will have a better time tonight? Who is more in tune with their sexuality? And actually, who's more in tune with their aliveness and feeling free and feeling happy rather than constantly being barraged by guilt? For what? Non-religious people often have better control over their sex lives and relationships because they don't have the constant interference of religious guilt. They don't try to dam up their desires. Instead, they channel them in appropriate ways. Now let's talk about pedophilia in the church. Despite outrageously inappropriate or illegal actions by many ministers and priests, the Catholic Church's outcry and response are muted. Let me see when he wrote this book, 2012. When a pedophile priest is found, we often learn that he has harmed dozens of victims over many years. We also learn that church officials were notified, parents had complained, and even police reports had been filed, but to no avail. I would say the other group that really hid pedophilia was the Boy Scouts. And not just the Catholic Church, all of the churches, because they want to protect their empire and their power and their control over the people. But compare this to a teacher or a principal in a public school. A public school principal doing anything sexual with a student is instantly fired. So would be a doctor. So would be a therapist. You would be turned in for not reporting it. But the self-righteous religious people are doing it, not only doing it, they're protecting the people who are perpetrating this on children. Protecting them. Hey, if that isn't hypocrisy, what is? And then the people go to church are like, well, a few bad apples don't ruin the Bible. Maybe it's the fact that you're shaming sexuality that's getting you all messed up here. So, silencing of the adult mind begins with infecting the mind of the child and creating an unquestioning blindness to religious authority. Now, I will say that people follow blindly to everything. I don't want you to believe anything that I say. I'm just making my videos. But there are people that will require you to blindly follow them. One is religion. Another one is 12-step meetings. If you don't keep coming to our meetings, you're going to end up drunk or dead or in jail. Cults do this too. And there's a lot of authority stuff in the schools where children have to repeat back what the teacher says. We don't really, and then during the lockdowns, a lot of people fell for that. They don't want to question authority. They don't want to question their doctor. They don't want to question things. So you got to start, we have to use our minds and ask questions. Does this make sense? Does this make sense? Does this work for me? But there's an unquestioning blindness to religious authority. The net result of this system is that Catholic clergy, charismatic preachers, and imams can do no wrong. Their word is God's word. This religious map prevents critical thinking about itself, though critical thinking about other religions is fine. And that's where we're going to end for today. I look forward to your comments, and thank you for watching my video.